Hello and welcome to the Metzger Collection. My name is Greg Thiessen. I am the Metzger Collection Manager. And today it's my privilege to bring you the first video mini tour of the Metzger Collection. And so today I figured a good tour would be a little bit of an intro into the Metzger Collection, some of the background, and particularly into the person of Fred Metzger, after whom the collection is named. And so let me bring you along with me. So first of all, the Metzger Collection is this museum we have on campus, Columbia Bible College, of replicas of artifacts and artwork that bring particularly the biblical story and in fact the story of human history to life. And it is this rare gem that we have on campus here in Abbotsford, British Columbia. And it is largely through the vision of this man that we have here, Reverend Dr. Fred Metzger. And so let me introduce him to you a little bit. Sadly, I never had the privilege of meeting him personally, but let me share about him. Reverend Dr. Fred Metzger was born in Budapest in 1920 to German and Hungarian parents. In 1941, he was ordained by the Reformed Church of Hungary. As a young Reformed Church minister on the Good Shepherd Commission, Metzger was especially active, opening his home and working underground, posing as a chaplain of a chemical company, while helping Jews and Christians to escape Nazi persecution during the Second World War. Metzger saved several Jewish lives from the horrors of the Holocaust. And so the Israeli government honored him with the Terra Sancta Award and the 25th anniversary silver medal of the Holy Land. Later in 2006, Metzger was also presented by the Israeli ambassador to Canada with the Righteous Among the Nations medal and title. Here we have the certificate of honor, honoring non-Jewish people who rescued Jews during the Holocaust. And that was in January 9th, 2006. In 1949, Fred married Margaret Friesen, a Canadian missionary to Hungary, but a few months later, she was ordered out of Hungary as an alien by the communist government. Under the World Council of Churches, they worked in Hungarian refugee camps in West Germany until 1950. Reverend Metzger came to Canada in 1950 as a minister of the Reformed Church of Hungary and was soon appointed to start Calvin Hungarian Presbyterian Church in Edmonton. In 1953, he was sent to Vancouver to begin another Hungarian congregation, and in 1956 was sent by the church to Vienna during the Hungarian uprising to bring more than 4,000 Protestant refugees and 6 Presbyterian ministers to Canada. From 1958 to 1962, Fred Metzger was a faculty member at the Vancouver Bible Institute. And in 1967, Fred Metzger was appointed a minister of St. Columba Presbyterian Church in Vancouver, where he remained until his retirement in 1993. And there we see a picture of him in St. Columba Presbyterian Church. Metzger was also active, was also the institutional chaplain at the Central City Mission in Vancouver, the largest men's shelter in Canada from 1958 to 1964. Founded the Westminster Foundation for Clinical Training of Clergy in 1967 and helped establish the Vancouver Crisis and Suicide Prevention Center. He was both a pastor, a scholar, and very active minister. And in 1997, he received his Doctor of Divinity degree, honorary Doctor of Divinity degree, which we see there from the Presbyterian College at McGill University, Montreal. Now, this vision for the, prior to coming to Columbia, what is now known as the Metzger Collection, was then formed as the Biblical Museum of Canada Quest exhibit. Reverend Metzger originally received this thought of a biblical museum at Expo 1967 in Montreal and went ahead with the idea. It had been endorsed by the Vancouver and District Council of Churches, the BC Centennial Committee, and the patron was Roman Catholic Archbishop James Carney. That same year, while on a study tour of Israel, Metzger began collecting replicas of artwork and artifacts that connected to the biblical story. Over the years, Metzger gathered replicas from over 18 world museums and picked up other items from his yearly trips to the Middle East. In 1980, Reverend Metzger founded and became the executive director of the Biblical Museum of Canada Quest exhibits, having collected over 1,200 replicas of items from Sumerian, Egyptian, biblical, and classical times, together with art objects and documentations from the Middle Ages to modern history. Over the years, before coming to the Columbia Bible College, selected items have been exhibited at the Expo 86, Missions Fest, Vancouver Public Library, and Regent College. Fred's wife, Margaret, died in 1998, and Fred married Florence Edge over a year later. Florence was heavily involved as the secretary and cataloger of the collection, and it was instrumental in paving the way for its transfer to the college. Reverend Metzger died on March 9th, 2011, knowing that his teaching museum would be moving to Columbia Bible College. And so it is, in many ways, this tragedy that this vision that Fred Metzger had, that he brought up, that he carried for 50 years as he collected, as he worked towards this vision for the Biblical Museum of Canada, that he never actually got to see it fulfilled on display for the public to access here at Columbia Bible College. But he had already made those arrangements, and his vision was going to be fulfilled. And so Columbia Bible College received the Metzger Collection in 2012, received the objects, artifacts, started the work of redesigning this whole basement level of the resource center that we have here, and which was largely enabled through Fred Metzger's gift and donation, not only of the artifacts, but in fact of his residence in Vancouver, which was sold to create this space and a partial 10-year endowment to really get this up and running. So an incredible gift and legacy for us, and which we're very eager to share and to pass on. Now, one other thing I wanted to mention about Fred Metzger that you may not know, and in fact, I didn't know when I first started my work here at the Metzger Collection, was that in addition to being a pastor, in addition to being a scholar, Fred Metzger was a bit of an artist. Now, this portrait that I was showing you earlier was done by one of Fred Metzger's good friends, Joseph Gabinek. In fact, he has done a few of the replica paintings that we have in the Metzger Collection, as well as his wife, Antonia Lanik, and even his daughter, Maria Gavinkova, have done several pieces that are on display in the Metzger Collection. But Fred Metzger himself was also a bit of an artist. And so this is one of the pieces that we have in the Metzger Collection. This is a portrait of Galileo. Now, the original of this was done by Ottavio Leoni in 1625, and Fred Metzger has done this replica. And Galileo is a figure that certainly fits well within the vision of the Metzger Collection of highlighting not only the biblical story, but also Christians and the Christian story throughout history. Now, typically, Galileo is seen as a rather controversial figure and seen as this case study of conflict between science and Christianity. Now, certainly there is much of that within Galileo's story, although it's, I think, over-dramatized sometimes. And part of the reason Galileo came into conflict with the Catholic Church was particularly because of his own devout faith and his own reading and interpretation of Scripture that he didn't see at odds with his science and his understanding of a heliocentric, that is, sun-centered universe, rather than a geocentric or earth-centered. Galileo also developed telescope technology to view the moon, to view the stars, planets with greater detail and clarity, and to document his observations. And so with Galileo, we find a source of not only historical fascination, but also a source of inspiration. And this is one of our vision, or one of Fred Metzger's visions for this collection that he had. His belief that not only the collection would highlight the biblical story, trace it throughout history, and the Christian story beyond that, through it would see the impact of biblical and Christian figures on their broader historical context, and this context that feeds into the story that we have. But even beyond that, Fred Metzger saw that this telling of the history, these artifacts that would bring the biblical and Christian story to life, would inspire meaning for the viewer, would prompt us to follow in the footsteps of those who have gone before us, to see the heights to which we can reach in our life and for our context. And so that is a brief intro to this Metzger collection. And starting next week, we will go further into the collection and trace through some different themes that can be found among these pieces. And so until then, I will see you later, and pray that you stay safe and well.